Hey, sorry I missed everyone yesterday. The day of the Rebbe's yard site. I was in New York at the Rebbe's gravesite, and I'm still there now. As you see, I'm walking. I have no space to do my live. I'm here for Shabbos to spend some time with my parents. But I did want to say a Dvar Torah. So I'll start with a story. They say about this guy who was going into, he went into the bagel store one day and he wanted to buy a bagel. He says, how much is the bagel? The guy says, the bagel is $5. He says, $5? He says, yeah. $1 for the bagel and $4 for Israel. The guy says, why? Wow, this is a noble cause. He's giving $4 for Israel. That's great. The next day he comes to buy a challah. And he says, how much is the challah? The guy says, the challah is $12. He says, $12? He says, yeah, $5 for the challah and $7 for Israel. He says, wow. So the next day he comes in to buy a cake. He says, how much is the cake? He says, $50. He says, $50? He says, yeah, $20 for the cake and $30 for Israel. He says, can I speak to your manager? He says, sure, 1 minute. He calls out the bag. He says, Israel, someone wants to talk to you. Anyways, the story I want to tell you today is connected to Korach, but it's also connected to Israel and Israel's relationship with the media and the world that so often turns against it. We read the story of Korach and Korach's rebellion. What's fascinating is that Korach was able to get the entire Jewish people, not the entire, but a huge group of the Jewish people to join his rebellion. And the question is why? Why was Korach able, and how? How did he get so many people to go against the leader of the Jewish people who so caringly took care of the Jewish people? And I want to tell you a fascinating midrash. But in order to explain you this midrash and to tell you the story of Israel, I need to give you a little bit of an introduction in the laws of Judaism. So you need to bear with me for a minute. You see, in Torah we have a rule like this. When a person has a field, and don't forget a lot of the Jewish people had agriculture, that when they were lifting the stalks, if a few of the sheaves of stalks of wheat fell, they had to leave it for the poor person. And then they had to leave a corner of their field for the poor person too. And besides that, when they had bundles and they were taking the bundles back with them from the field, and one was left and they forgot it, they can't come back to get it. Once you forgot it, you leave it for the poor people. Besides that, the Torah also has a law. You see, the Kohanim and the Levites were the poorest people amongst the Jewish people. They had no land. They were allotted land by the Jewish people. They didn't own anything, and they gave service in the Holy Temple to God for the Jewish people. So how did they live? So the story was, if you had, let's say, 100 bundles of wheat, you had to give about 2 of them to the Kohen, which were less, and about 9 of them to the Levite, which were more. It was tithing, so about 11 out of every 100. Besides that, the Torah tells you that if you have only a sheep, a male sheep, a cow, then you give the firstborn of that cow, of your sheep, the firstborn male cow, you give to the Kohen. And when you slaughter an animal for yourself, you give the cheek, the maw, and the shoulder to the Kohen. Besides that, the Torah has another law about agriculture. You listening? You still paying attention? The law is that you're not allowed to have a donkey and a cow plow your field together. Why? Because the cow regurgitates and the donkey will think the cow's always eating and will wonder why it's not getting food. So out of compassion to the donkey, we don't do that. And also the Torah never wanted us to mix the species of wheat and fruit, as to keep the gender and the species authentic. So now that I gave you that whole introduction of Jewish law, let me tell you what Korach did. Korach gathered the Jewish people and he said to them, listen, I have a lady in my community. She's a widow with 2 children. She lives together with these 2 children. And how did she make a living? She has a little field. Moses came to her right away and he says, listen, you can't plow a donkey and a cow together. Then Moses told her, he says, listen, she came to plant, and he says, you can't mix the species. No cow no grain wheat together with the fruit. Then he told her, when she was collecting it, don't forget, the corner, as we remember, it has to go to the poor person. And anything you forgot has to go to the poor person. And then he wanted her to tithe. She figured she can't make a living anymore. This poor widow says, listen, everything I want, Moses wants a piece of this. Moses doesn't want me to do this. Moses wants me to give this to him and this to Aaron. So she said, I'm done. She sells her field and she buys herself 2 sheep. What's she going to do with the sheep? She's going to live from the shearing and she's going to sell the babies. Fine. Moses comes to her and says, listen, the firstborn's born, remember, right? The male cow, you have to give me the first. And then when she shears it, he says, you got to give it to Aaron. So she says, enough of this. Everything I have, Moses and Aaron want a part of it. She says, I'm going to slaughter my sheep and I'm going to eat it. Comes Moses and says, 1 second, you got to give me the maw, the shoulder, you got to give me my parts. So she was so disgusted, she says, you know what, all this is forbidden to me. Now in Jewish law, there's one more law I didn't tell you about, but if you say something's forbidden on me, instead of it going to the garbage, the Torah says you have to give it to the Kohen. So Moses says, give it to me, to the Levite, to the Kohen. So she gives it to Moses, she's disgusted. The poor widow goes home weeping without anything for her and her 2 children, and Moses takes everything away from her. This is what Korach says. He had everyone weeping. In fact, I'm already crying. I feel so bad for this widow. What did Moses and Aaron do? Of course he was able to gather everyone on his side. But you know what the problem is? I'll tell you 3 problems here. Korach didn't discuss the laws. He didn't have an argument about why these laws were made. He tried to pull on people's heartstrings. Korach didn't tell them that the reason these laws were made were to protect these poor widows. The poor people should have some food also. He didn't explain that the Levites and the Kohanim were the poorest of the Jewish people and that they also needed food. And what was the tithing? It was 10% of your earnings. The people that worked in the temple and had no money of their own. But Korach didn't do that. Korach didn't care about that. Korach just wanted to pull on the heartstrings of the people and get them on the side. He knew if he told them a story of a poor widow and how she had no money to feed her kids, that they would get onto his side. Never mind, Korach didn't tell the Jewish people that this same Moses, who took everything away from the widow, is the one that writes in the Torah that God gave him. God writes that you have to look after the widow and that you're not allowed to hurt them and that the leavings in your field are for the widow and the poor. But he didn't do anything of that because that would have not worked for him. Most importantly, he didn't explain the reason of each of these laws, that it was to care for the animal, to care for the poor, to care for the destitute, and to care for the widow. Because Korach had one agenda. Korach wanted to get everyone on his side against Aaron and Moses. And he knew that if he explained the laws, they would agree with Moses and Aaron. If he explained them why these things were happening, they would agree. But he knew people aren't always interested in explanations. People want drama. So if you pull on their heartstrings, you grab them. Life is good. You know what Korach was? Korach was the first demagogue in the history of the world. And Korach wasn't the last. Dictators and authoritarians throughout the history have used Korach's tactics to become the greatest demagogues in the history. You know, there was an old saying in the Soviet Union that used to say like this. It said, the Soviet Union will be saved by one of 2 things. Killing all the Jews, or if you don't killing all the Jews, or painting all the trains red. So someone asks, really? Why painting all the trains red? I don't know, that's a good question. But the first ones understood that through killing all the Jews, the Soviet Union will be saved. You see, demagogues are the worst of all because they pull on heartstrings, because they know people don't want to use their mind and their hearts only. And they try to rabble-rouse and get people on their side through their stories. You open the New York Times and you see a picture of a poor teenage Palestinian kid trying to bring food to his poor family, and he has to go through a roadblock, and what do you see? A big tank and a soldier all in armor with his gun standing there not letting him in. That's the picture the New York Times puts. Of course, if you're a young college kid in Harvard, in Columbia, in UMass, in Binghamton, wherever you might be, and you're taught about compassion, and you're young and you're idealistic, you say, what's going on here? This poor 15-year-old kid wants to bring food to his family, and the Jewish state doesn't allow it. They have tanks and armors, and who pays for it? Us Americans. So suddenly you go screaming against Israel. Suddenly you join a BDS movement because you care about the poor Palestinian kid. But the New York Times didn't tell you that the reason why Israel had to put the roadblock in is because from Gaza they're sending fires and balloons, and they're sending suicide bombers to bomb people. They're sending people to kill people in their homes. They don't tell you that. You think Israel wants to have security roadblocks? You know how much it cost Israel? But that's the most compassionate thing that Israel could do for its citizens, to protect them from those who want to kill, butcher, maim. Israel doesn't do that because they have to, they're provoked. But why would the media tell you that? For the New York Times, it's much better to just put a picture of a tank and a poor Palestinian kid trying to get food to this poor family, because it knows that that way it'll get the people on its side. It'll get the young kids feeling bad. The New York Times uses demagogue to be able to demonize Israel. Korach was the first demagogue in the history. He used the story of a widow and two poor children of that widow to be able to get all the Jewish people against Moses. And that's what the Jew haters do today. They don't tell you that Israel's surrounded by millions of people and tens of states, that all they want to do if they had a chance, they would just kill every Israeli and wipe them off the map and throw them into the ocean. They don't tell you that Iran screams every day we have to wipe Israel off the map, and that's why they want nuclear weapons. They tell you that Israel is this big, strong state fighting against all these little people. Demagogy is dangerous because it doesn't use logic. It only uses emotion. You look about the arguments going on in America today. You look at the media and how discussions are had. We don't discuss facts anymore. We don't discuss ideas anymore. We pull on people's heartstrings. They become demagogues to demonize Israel, to demonize people, communities. Israel has to wake up to this, and so did the Jewish people. We have to learn how to use these tactics back on them. We have to fight them and explain what's going on here and show them the stories and the history to protect our people, to protect Eretz Israel, and to protect the truth of what's really happening here. Shabbat Shalom. I'm in New York, as I said, this Shabbos. There won't be minyan tomorrow. I am celebrating together with my parents and my family the blessings that we do have. And I want to wish you a good Shabbos in times of celebration. And we should learn from Korach and from the first demagogue how to respond to the demagogues of today, and to protect our people, and to protect Israel, and to protect America from those that try to use these libelous attacks. Have a great Shabbos. We'll see you again on Sunday. Be well and enjoy the time with your family.